Hi there. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about Vedic astrology uh, and wish you blessings. Admittedly, it's been an interesting week over the past week. We'll look at that in some detail. I'm going to try something and see if you like it. I'm going to do the chart without my glasses, number one. And also, I'm going to ask you if you like me working in a studio setting or if you prefer me working in this particular environment. Okay. The studio setting, I can set up the charts. It's a little bit more work, but I can set up the charts. I'll have better production. So, I mean, I think that's the plus to that. And I will be able to do a home studio within a few months. So, I mean, that's one of the advantages to that as well. But I want you to let me know what you think of these broadcasts, whether or not you like them or not. Also, subscriptions are really important in YouTube. I would like to get to the stage where this platform is actually monetized. That is, I can accept revenue from it. And without further ado, let's go into the chart because I ramble too much and I chunk time off the end when I'm doing the chart analyses for each individual sign. So I'm starting to become aware of that and trying to correct it. Okay, so let me know, glasses with or without. I can see the chart pretty well without my glasses. And just let me know. Okay. I am a bit silvery, more silvery at the top of my hair. It's growing out a little bit. So let me know if you prefer me with short hair or long hair. Really the image is not as important to me is whether or not I'm pleasing you. Okay, so we have a nifty little chart. Now there has been a lot of drama in Washington over the past few weeks, and definitely in Afghanistan. But I just want to go over the chart and tell you what's been happening. That's sort of like led up to that particular condition, and I'll delve into Joe Biden's chart a little bit too because I looked at that yesterday for somebody for a class I was doing, and it's actually a fascinating thing. So, but I won't spend a lot of time on it because I want to stay more finely focused. All right, so we have, at the time I'm talking with you, we have a Virgo rising. Venus is in the same sign with Mercury. Now this, I've discussed this with you before. This creates what's called a Nietzsche Banga Raj Yoga. Now Nietzsche means fallen, Banga means canceled, Raj Yoga means special planetary combination. So Venus and Mercury, number one, they're friends. Number two, they're among the best planets for this particular rising sign. Venus rules the second house of wealth and also the ninth house of luck and higher knowledge. Mercury rules the house of action, which is the 10th house, and the first house. Now, Venus is debilitated in Virgo, but there is sort of a nice aspect to this particular combination because Venus is mathematical, but it's not. I'm just trying to think of a good way to put it. It's not categorical, if I can describe that. What I mean by categorical is Venus likes to look at the big picture. So physicists tend to have strong Venuses. So there's math required there, but most physics comes from the math. That's true. But it also comes from a conceptual premise. And I think without the conceptual premise, which is usually revealed through experimentation or through experience. Okay, so you see certain phenomena happening, and you build a theory around why that happens, and that theory should apply in all cases. Okay, it's not so let's say if you develop a scientific theory, it shouldn't work in some cases over here and in other cases over there, and still be a scientific theory. It's supposed to be a scientific law. So, and there are various reasons why that law won't work out under certain circumstances. But a law, and like I said, a law is determined circumstantially. So just because it's a law, just because, and this is kind of what irritates me about the people talking about following the science. Science is a constant development of hypotheses, testing of hypotheses, and re-examination of hypotheses. So if you're following the science and you're only coming to one interpretation and not testing out other interpretations, which in fairness to scientists they have, and testing out other hypotheses, then you're not following the law. You're not following science. You're following dogma. Because you've said, we know everything there is to know about this particular matter. We've made the discovery. That's it. End of discussion. Well, certain things, yeah, we know how to split an atom. We know how to do that. We know what results from that. We know how to, we know the basic laws of motion from Newton. But Einstein found some peculiarities and tried to develop a universal set of laws of motion, and he failed. And people are still working on that. And there are just areas of science which are really fuzzy. I'm not talking about climate change in particular, although climate change would fall under the general category of we don't know everything about it. We know certain things are true, but we don't know everything about it. So I'm not saying climate change isn't real. I'm saying we don't know everything about it. Okay, so there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference, and so I'm not saying that there haven't been climate change effects in the environment. That most certainly have, but and so that Venus combined with Mercury actually gives us a lot of ways to categorize behavior, a lot of ways to earn wealth if we're discriminating. And also if we categorize just a little bit more. So this Venus-Mercury conjunction is positive. What's it negative for? Well, it's negative for unconditional feelings of love. Okay, so Venus tends to, as a planet, tends to like everything. It tends to like it likes the material world. It likes the spiritual and the material world. So Jupiter's more drawn towards ethical behavior, the way life should be lived, premises based upon universal truths, etc., etc. And Venus says, well, there are no universal truths. That's where I'm pulling this from, or universal truths are malleable. So I'm not saying which perspective is correct. I'm just giving the different viewpoints. And so when you have this Venus-Mercury conjunction, that those universal laws tend to become malleable. So essentially, this is actually a good time for some partial recovery in the economy around the world. Is kind of a bad time for letting things go with either politics or with medicine or with anything else. So there'll be a lot of questioning over medicine, over politics over the next month or so. After that, Venus and Mercury are going to be together in Libra, which is a little bit of an easier sign, but that's aspected by Saturn. So it's still going to be a tough month, but it'll be a little bit more agreeable than normal. And people will feel a little bit more social I mean, I think the last couple of weeks, people have felt like really trapped or really locked in or really kind of disgusted. The Mercury tends to say, "Wait a minute, it's not so bad. It's, things are getting a little bit better. Let's be a little bit reasonable here, and let's see if we can shift our positions," because it was a stubbornness with Mercury and a fixed sign that we had up until just about a week ago, just about 3 or 4 days ago, excuse me. So you're seeing some more malleability on the part of the leadership in Washington, leaders around the world. They're becoming more flexible. They're more willing to talk to people, and also less defensive, if I can be honest about it. Also, but the press will probably still continue to be critical, although it won't be quite as hostile as it was before. The other thing you want to look at is we still have a Jupiter-Mars opposition that'll spread disease. Okay, that's really, and like I said, it's one of those things that if you don't really look at the data in the charts, you're going to say, well, Jupiter and Mars has spread war, but not disease. Well, disease is an enemy. Okay, it's something we fight, right? We fight disease. So disease is Martian. Chronic disease is Saturnian, but temporary disease is Martian. And so you're going to see a lot of spread. And again, I'm probably going to get into some trouble for this, but the infection rates are rising in COVID, but the death rates are kind of stable. So it's not really. It doesn't mean this shouldn't be taken seriously, but there's not really a good judgment or a good reason to stop or to shut down economies. To be truthful, we will see some efforts to do that probably within about 3 weeks when Jupiter, or excuse me, within about 2 weeks when Jupiter enters Capricorn, and I don't think people will be very happy about that. On the positive side, Jupiter will be influencing Saturn. It'll actually give the economy a little bit of a boost, and people will be a little bit more circumspect in how they behave. So that's the positive side. They'll be a little bit less angry, but I think, and there'll be more emphasis on civil rights and more emphasis on those kinds of things. But I think right now the Sun-Mars conjunction over here in Leo, it's for about another 3 weeks. It's going to make government very, very strict or very, very rigid. So you'll see a lot of governments sort of like tightening up controls or trying to tighten up controls, when actually communications will spread a lot more. There'll be more attention on, especially over the next 2 months, civil rights issues and trying to control or confine people. But I don't see this as being a crash. I don't see this as being a shutdown. I don't see this as being quite as catastrophic. And one of the reasons I'm saying that is mainly because Rahu is right now, let me just see now, Rahu is answering Rohini Nakshatra, which is essentially a prosperous nakshatra. Ketu is entering Anuradha Nakshatra, which is a nakshatra which gathers people together, and it'll make some strange or interesting coalitions, but it won't necessarily shut things down. And this is where the more rapidly moving planets tend to take place. We will see sort of a decline in confidence around mid-October to mid-November because the sun will be in Libra, where it doesn't like to be. But basically, this month in particular, the rest of the remainder of this month, you'll actually see an improving economy. I would say worldwide. You'll see conflict because that Moon Rahu combination gives a feeling of panic too. So it's not entirely innocuous, so people will be really, really worried about what's happening. And they'll be angry about what's happening because of that Mars. They'll be angry at the government because of the Mars-Sun conjunction. But this will be true, I would say, pretty much worldwide. This won't be something which is confined to the United States. I just wanted to give a quick look at Joe Biden's chart. And it's interesting because I did what's called an annual chart for Joe yesterday as well. And I don't know if I can pull it up again. I'll see if I can. But this is Joe's birth chart. And I know there's been some controversy over it, but the source that I pulled this from said the reliability is excellent. Now, there's a bit of a problem because it's given as an 8:30 time, which is usually highly suspect. I was born at 8:29, which is more, and I hate to use myself as a reference point, but whenever you get like these perfectly even birth times of like 8:30 or 9 o'clock, an astrologer immediately goes, that can't be right. There must have been like a minute or two off. But this was given as being a highly confident rating. Now, Joe's had a tough year, and I'll show you that when I go to his Varshapal chart. He has K2 in his first house by transit, so you remember the chart we were just looking at. And he has Rahu in his 7th house by transit. So that's tough on his relations with other people. K2 in the first house can make him seem like he doesn't know what he's doing. I'm going to be very blunt about this. It gives memory issues. I've experienced the K2 Mahadasha. I experienced a lot of the same memory issues I saw Joe experience. I see Joe experiencing, President Biden experiencing, excuse me. But he's also vulnerable because I was in my 50s when I went through that period, and I could kind of recover more quickly. This is not a good time for him. It's not even hitting his sun, so over the next 3 to 4 months is probably going to be a kind of an important time for his health, but even before next March. And next summertime is going to be a really tough time for his health because he changes major planetary periods. But that having been said, I was wondering why he has such a sudden collapse in approval ratings or a steady decline. And if I look at his birth chart, Joe has what a lot of astrologers would call a typical politician or lawyer combination. And that is he has a Mercury-Mars conjunction in his chart. So that means, you have to think quickly on your feet. You have to be ready to lie a little bit. I'm not impugning his character. I'm just saying that's the nature of politics to a certain extent. But he has a strong Jupiter, so he means well. He's got Rahu in the 10th house, so rises in career will present challenges for him. And as I've said before, Saturn aspects Jupiter in his chart. So with any rise in career, he's had, except when he became vice president, he's encountered like tremendous personal challenges. Like he lost his wife when he became a senator, even before he was sworn in. He lost his wife and one child when he became a senator. He had a brain aneurysm after he ran unsuccessfully for the presidency in 1988. He lost his son, Bo, in 2016 when he was thinking about making a run after Barack Obama's term was up. So there are all these things that happened in Joe's life that don't bode well for for him attaining when he attains high office. It doesn't mean it's not a curse, by the way. I really refuse to use that kind of language. Vedic astrology is very loose, fast and loose with that usage. But that Saturn in the seventh house aspecting Jupiter is a little bit tough. Saturn is also aspecting Jupiter by transit right now. So his next year and a half is going to be pretty tough for him. Okay. His moon, he's not in a bad Saturn transit. He's actually in a good Saturn transit in relationship to his moon. His moon's in Aries, though, and he has a Sun-Mars conjunction right over his Rahu right now. So any dissatisfaction people have with him as a leader will be amplified right now. You know, it's interesting because both he and Donald Trump had Rahu in the 10th house. That's what I find fascinating. But I'm not going to talk about the former president right now. I'm just going to talk about Joe. But basically, that's going to make a lot of people like you and a lot of people really, really dislike you. Okay. Okay. So it's sort of like an extension of the adage, you know, you can't please everybody all the time. You know, it's just would be impossible for this guy to do that. The other thing is, I looked at his chart and I said to myself, oh, look at his subperiod. May 21st, he enters a Mercury subperiod. Mercury is in his 12th house in his basic chart. Is in his 9th house with Saturn and Rahu and the moon. So his 9th house isn't particularly afflicted by transit, but that 12th house Mercury, I've been through a 12th house Mercury Mahadasha. It gives these wild rises and falls in fortune, especially career-wise. Mercury is the career indicator planet. So a lot of Vedic astrologers will say, well, it's a bunch of planets. Mercury's pretty much the career indicator planet. So Mercury's in trouble, your career's in trouble. Mercury's in the 9th house on here, along with Rahu and Saturn and Moon. So as I said, we have a bunch of people who already don't like him. You know, it's not, you know, and again, I'm not saying that negatively. I'm just saying that I'm just saying it factually from his chart. Okay. So what happens when you enter this Mercury subperiod during a Rahu? So you're a Jupiter's great. Jupiter's exalted, aspected by Saturn, but it's exalted. So it's slow progress. Rahu's in the 10th house, what gives rising career. That's perfect. Mercury's in the 12th. So what happens here? 8th house problems, hidden problems come up. He can overcome them because it's what they call a Vipreet Raj Yoga. But he'll have problems with the military because Mars is a military planet. He'll have problems with the perception that he's telling the truth because essentially what this does is underscore that Mercury-Mars conjunction in the chart, which is an essential ingredient for political life, but it can't be too obvious. Also, if we go to the Navamsha chart, it indicates dissatisfaction with the answers you're given at Rahu. So and if I look at his Varshapal chart, I'm just going to show you the quick Varshapal, and you're going to have to take my word for the other symbol because it's going to be a little bit tough to pull up in the limited time I have. So let's see if I can go to the Varshapal chart. Varshapal is an annual chart. Okay, so I want to go to 2020 and flip the charts. And then we'll go back to the main chart and get back to what's happening with the world. All right, so now it's interesting because you have Mercury. So this gives Scorpio as the rising sign for last year's Washington, November 20th, I was born. And essentially, these are supposed to be tough years for people in which people have to reinvent themselves. They face a lot of opposition. It's almost like being reborn if your annual chart rising sign falls in the same sign you were born in. Mercury's in the 12th house. Take my word for it. He's running a Mercury sub-period since July 31st. Okay, it's gonna take too much time for me to pull it up right now. So he'll probably come out of this period around October 1st. He can get help from the military. I mean, that's one of the things that does show up in the chart, and it looks like he's taking that help. But if he were smart, he would push back the withdrawal date. This is my suggestion as an astrologer. I'm not advising the president. He would be smart if he would push the withdrawal date back to October 1st when he has a more favorable sub-period. This sub-period is really kind of poor. So I just want to look at Biden's chart, and also this indicates problems in foreign countries. Okay, so Venus is in the 12th house, Venus is in Libra in the 12th house. Ultimate victory, ultimate success, but at a price, because 12th house victories always come at a price. So let's go back to the main chart we were looking at before, and let's go to world events. Okay. Change that to New Bedford. Yes, because that's where I am. And halfway done. So I'm trying to keep my timing like really under an hour. Also, this is just a reminder, smash the like button, get the word out. I'm an exciting guy. I have some exciting things coming up. I'm working on a book, which I promise is going to really be a very significant book on Vedic astrology. I've been reorganizing it like I did my doctoral dissertation. So I'm actually like really thrilled about it this time. It's not something where other times I started up and went like, well, somebody's written a book on this and somebody's written a book on that, but I have so many new things I want to share with you. I feel really excited about this book. And I also think I want to correct some misconceptions I see happening in Vedic astrology, and also provide some possible solutions for that. So it's not that the other people are bad astrologers. That's not it. I think we emphasize memorization too much in Vedic astrology. So we memorize all these combinations and all this other stuff, which are certainly important, but we need to start to understand analysis, why these things work as they do. Okay. And some people have made steps in that direction. But I think they reached more, let's say, not incorrect conclusions, but conclusions I don't agree with. So I want to give people a chance to make up their minds, make up their own minds. All right, so let's go back. Let's go to the world chart. So we know we're going to have despair in foreign countries because we have Moon and Rahu. So the rising signs change, but I'm going to start from the rising sign I work with. So we had Moon and Rahu in the 9th house. So we know we're going to have problems or upsets in foreign countries. Government's going to be in trouble. But again, there's some increased prosperity, some increased confidence coming up right now, less of a feeling of despair. Romance is a little bit, like I said, is a little bit thwarted, but people can be clever about romantic involvements. But by the time Venus moves over to Libra in about 10 days, they may say, oops, this really isn't a valuable relationship for me. I'm not sure I want to be in this particular relationship. And Saturn is aspect in the 7th house, so it does delay relationships anyway. So let's go back to Let's go back to the time and space chart. All right, so let's see where our trouble spots are now. All right, so let's start from left to right because that's the way I read. I have no problem with people who start from right to left, but that's the way I read. All right, so we have a descending Saturn line coming close to Hawaii, but not quite on it. So there may be some environmental concerns out there, and I believe I did read there were some. Moon, Sun, Jupiter lines, sort of like in the middle of the Pacific. So some possibility of storms, but not really a major issue out there. Mars is still going down through Washington, Vancouver, Oregon, Nevada, California. So fires are still going to be going on out there. That's really going to take a while for that to abate. This one's probably not until the end of September, really, I think, before the fires start abating, unfortunately. And we have a Mercury line running through New Mexico and up north. So that's not a bad line, but there will be concerns about lying and politics. So the recall is coming up. It's interesting because I can see Governor Newsom is actually declared a new initiative, but I do think he's in trouble, to be honest with you, just because the Sun-Mars conjunction right now. I can't remember when the recall is going to occur. I feel ashamed of that, but if the recall happens when I think it does, he's going to be in big trouble. But he just might pull himself out of it. But I'm, and it may just be an issue of people being afraid to make a change more so than people wanting a change. But you'll see some political scandals in this part of the country, in the western states, and all the way up to the border of Texas. Venus is running through the industrial, what they used to call the industrial heartland, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. And so you'll see some flooding, some possibility of flooding, but also some quick resolution of that. And there's nothing really close to the East Coast except for Saturn, but that usually indicates also we're going to see some problems with flooding in Central America down here. In terms of Saturn's hitting off the coast of Maine, so the East Coast will be a little bit depressed, but not really that bad. And it'll hit more of South America, like Western Brazil, Argentina. So Argentina is going to continue having problems with this government. Bolivia, and also going into some panic over disease and foreign intervention in eastern Brazil because of the Moon Rahu conjunction. Also, you'll see some panic in Scotland, Ireland, and again, some environmental issues near Iceland and Greenland and near the Azores. Mercury's going over, not really quite close to Cape Verde, more close to Madeira. And so you'll see some political scandals in the Azores and Portugal, I think, as well. Venus, some danger of flooding in France, danger of fires, believe it or not, in France as well. And as we go over to the moon, some upsets in government, in especially domestically in Norway, Sweden, Finland, all the way over to the USSR. Turkey's largely, and most of Western Europe, most of Middle Europe, is largely uninvolved right now. There's not a lot of planetary activity going on down there. The most seriously afflicted part of the world right now is, I would say, is Saudi Arabia up through Iran, and also if we want to get real specific and pretty obviously up through Tajikistan and Afghanistan and Western India. Western India will suffer somewhat from what's happening, and there may even be fires and more epidemics and government scandals in India, flooding and possibly flooding all over. Like I said, quick resolution in eastern India. And if we go over to Japan, looks like it's pretty safe. And China is, again, China has been in shutdown mode for a little while. It shut down like large components of its economy because it's very afraid of additional COVID scares, COVID spreading, excuse me. And that makes sense. They're not anxious to spread it anymore, and because the population is so tightly packed, it's more difficult to control than it is even in the United States. So at least in the cities, excuse me. And Korea may have experienced a little bit of a COVID scare as well, and Australia as well. New Zealand a little bit as well. I think New Zealand actually did announce some mandates. They've been relatively not untouched, but they've been out of the news, and their prime minister has been praised for how she handled the pandemic, and all these other things. But there have been stories surfacing over here in the United States that actually they're planning on shutting down parts of New Zealand, or doing much more stringent social distancing than they ever had before. Guinea is having a tough time with Saturn hat, and China has that Saturn line running through it. Indochina, what they used to call Indochina, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Burma, or now Myanmar, excuse me. They look okay. There's not a lot of activity, but they are between a Saturn and a Venus line, so they may have some economic fallout from what's happening in China, which would make perfect sense. Japan looks to be in pretty good shape, but there may be some there are some governmental scandals in Japan right now. So interesting times. This is not really a time, so we're not out of the woods yet. We'll be for about another 6 months in terms of COVID. But on the positive side, there has been the COVID B and COVID D strains. The COVID B is considered more dangerous from what I read or from what I heard than the COVID D strain is. And if they can get people to vaccinate, and again, something you have to be clear about, this vaccination isn't like other vaccinations. This isn't a kill part of the disease, which builds up your immunity to the disease. This stimulates immunity factors. So, and like I said, from what limited knowledge I have, so essentially it's a little bit like bringing out a knife. It emulates the sickness. It gives you a chance to fight back. Is the two most effective vaccines are the Moderna and the Pfizer, at least from the data that I've seen. And the Chinese vaccine, the vaccine that's being used in China, and the AstraZeneca virus vaccine aren't as effective. And the Johnson & Johnson may be cleared again. That's what I read. Pfizer has passed FDA approval. It's been permanently approved. So again, I'm not people who don't want to get vaccines. I'm not, that's your belief. I just think it's if you're going into, to use a really weak analogy, if you're going out into a rainstorm, it's probably a good idea to bring at least an umbrella or maybe a good water repellent overcoat. Okay, even if it slows down a little bit. Okay, so all right, but I think the areas that I'm most worried about are Brazil, the fires in the West Coast, and there have been a lot of fires also in other parts of the country as well. So that's not really a good sign. And also, I'm definitely worried about Afghanistan, and to a certain extent about England and Ireland, and the Azores, just because of the lines that are running through those places. South America's had a lot of challenges for quite a few months right now. And China's being very rigid in its policy. It's their right to do so. We have a Sun-Saturn line going right through here. That's like really rigid government authority. So let's get so let's get away from this, and let's go back to the chart for people. So for people with Aries rising, there'll be concerns about money, dissatisfaction with money, although they will be getting some more money. And that moon is exalted right now. It's a really strong moon, but there'll still be some anxiety that it won't last, okay? Especially by the end of the day. In terms of family life, children will be problematic. Health of wife may be at risk, or a relationship partner, although there'll be a way to figure out how to overcome it. And relationship life will be a little bit tough this month. It'll smooth out a lot over the next month, over the next few days. K2's in the 8th house. So again, relationship partners will be pessimistic. And Jupiter's in the 11th house, Saturn's in the 10th. So essentially a lot of hard work into a career. It'll pay off in the long run. And actually you'll see career life expand within about by the end of September. Taurus has Moon and Rahu in it. When we look at these, and then stop the share and just share again, just to make sure we're not losing the share. Taurus has Moon and Rahu in the 1st house. Again, people will be ambitious, maybe a little bit frightened about taking their ambitions public, but it's a good time for them to start new projects. And also projects that, especially that will focus on fame or recognition. Again, this is May 15th through June 15th, not April 22nd through May 22nd. I just want to make that clear. Home life will be problematic, argumentative. Potential relationship partners will seem to be distant or aloof, but there is a way to bring them in communicationally over the next month or so, especially over the next week or so. But I also think relationship life will be very frustrating for these folks over the next 6 months or so. 9th house has Saturn in it, so slow but steady progress. Jupiter is in the 10th house, so good for career opportunities. For Gemini, a lot of ambition, a lot of success, a lot of recognition for beauty, for aesthetic things, for artistic things. They'll be very successful in these endeavors over the next few weeks. Good for writing projects. And but they'll be kind of critical about their appearance, kind of critical about how they look. K2's in the sixth house, so some minor illnesses, but maybe even surgery for this sign, if that's in the cards. Saturn's in the eighth house, so this gives improved durability, but a little bit difficult for relationship happiness. Jupiter's in the ninth, so they'll have people interested in them relationship-wise. Moon and Rahu, some concern or arguments with mother or the maternal side of the family, and also some sleeplessness. Cancer has Sun and Mars in the second house and Venus and Mercury in the third house. So they'll be ambitious. They'll want to push their way to the top. Saturn's in the seventh house. They'll get support from peers and from people they work with, but they'll have a lot of extra work, and they'll be very, very aggressive in pursuing their goals. Venus and Mercury in the third house, they'll actually manage to be polite about doing it. So they'll be dissatisfied with the progress they've been taking, and maybe even dissatisfied with their home life. K2's in the fifth house, some minor illnesses to children, some minor setbacks in life, but not really all that significant. Jupiter's in the eighth, unexpected legacy. A person actually gets a reward they weren't expecting. And Moon and Rahu in the 10th house, career boost, but it could be temporary or it could be illusory, or they'll have to really fight to hold on to that career boost. And all sorts of financial gains. For Leo, Sun is in the first house, so this time will be very strong, along with Mars, very aggressive this month. Venus and Mercury, more money coming in, but they'll have to be more critical about spending. They'll have to be more careful about spending. K2 is in the fourth house, so some family aggression. Saturn's in the sixth, some minor illnesses. Jupiter's in the seventh house, good for new relationship partners and new partnerships in general. Moon is in the 10th house, so again, a career boost, the same as we saw with Cancer, but they'll have to watch out how they carry themselves over the next 6 months. It won't be automatic, it'll be automatic after 6 months. And finally, the 11th house Lord goes into the second house, so it's good for money, but they'll have to be careful about spending out of panic. For Virgo, Venus and Mercury, we already discussed this to a certain extent, but Venus and Mercury are in the first house. Mars is in the 12th house. Be very careful about relationships, about new relationships, especially romantic relationships you form. You may have people taking advantage of you. Venus and Mercury, though, in the first house makes the sign very attractive, very appealing to outsiders. They'll seem to be very sharp and very articulate. They'll get a lot done this month. And monetarily, they'll also improve. K2's in the third house, a lot of extra willpower, ambition. Saturn's in the fifth house, so some difficulty with luck. They'll have to work really hard to make things happen for themselves. Jupiter's in the sixth. They may have some opposition from conventional people. Moon is in the ninth, so again, some good gain of luck, but they'll have to work hard to sustain it. And Sun and Mars are in the 12th house. Again, be careful about spending money too quickly. Libra, first Lord is in the 12th house, but it's with an exalted Mercury, so that indicates spending for good purposes, spending for education. K2 is in the second house, a little bit of distance from home or a little bit of problems with home life. Saturn's in the fourth house. Things that on the home front go very slowly. Jupiter's in the fifth house. People will tend to admire these individuals for their intellect. Moon is in the eighth house, so there can be some afflictions or concern about career matters. So they should be careful to watch their backs in career situations. 11th house, though, is very strong. They'll give some good financial gains to this sign this month. Scorpio has K2 in the first house, which has had for quite a while. Saturn's in the third house, so they have a lot of drive, a lot of ambition for their career life. And Jupiter being in the fourth house tends to give them good home life or a lot of support for education. Moon is in the seventh house, so there'll be a temptation to get into illicit relationships or hang out with bad people. It can bring some benefits, especially in business partnerships, but I would recommend against considering adultery because it'll really be kind of a mess. And also it's wrong. It's not even just a mess, it's wrong. Sun and Mars are in the 10th house, so they should give a lot of career boosts to the sign, and also some very attractive but really kind of dishonest friends, but gains, financial gains. Sagittarius Lord is in the third house, so it's still interested in exploring, visiting new places. Saturn's in the second house, still slow gain of income, but it will come to people. Moon and Rahu are in the sixth house, so they have to be careful. There'll be some, what I would call hypochondriacal conditions. That is, they'll think they have diseases when they really don't have it. Mars is in the ninth house, good for support from the government. Venus and Mercury are in the 10th house, good for career, but they'll have to focus in order to retain gains next month. And K2's in the 12th house, good for spiritual advancement, but also they have to watch spending. Capricorn, there's a Sasha Yoga in this chart. By the way, I meant to say earlier, this what's called a Vajra Yoga. So Mercury's in its own sign or exalted in the chart I pulled up this morning. So it's highly intelligent, good for communications. But we have a Sasha Yoga with Saturn and Capricorn going retrograde. It'll turn direct around mid-October. So a lot of projects that have been delayed will actually move forward around that time. And Jupiter goes direct pretty within about around the same time, around close to it, around September 23rd, as I recall. And you'll see it slowly moving back towards Aquarius again. But Jupiter in this sign is good for financial gains, but you'll have to work twice as hard to get them. Moon and Rahu are in the fifth house, so there's some anxiety over luck over children. Sun and Mars are in the eighth house, so there's a lot of emphasis on research. Career-wise, they'll do okay. The Lord of the 10th is in the ninth with an exalted Mercury, but they do have to watch out for their friends. They can't really trust their friends to be reliable this year. Aquarius has good opportunities for partnerships, especially with the government. The government will smile favorably upon Aquarius. There are some concerns about home life, some anxiety about home life and education, and even illness for this sign this month. But again, like I said, nothing really tangible. But there will be a certain amount of fame, and this sign will actually get some recognition for written work. Sun and Mars are in, this is what's called the Agajikashara Yoga, and this will give fame and recognition to the sign. Venus is in the eighth house, so this sign will seem very sexy. It'll seem very attractive to the opposite sex. K2's in the 10th house, so again, not a lot of recognition career-wise. That's been the standard over the year. And Saturn's in the 12th, so it'll give some problems with finances. Finally, Pisces, Moon Rahu conjunction in the third house, the Lord of the first house in the 12th, some fear of losses, some fear about children and the status of the person's luck, some genuine illness connected with the stomach and with Sun and Mars in the sixth house. Relationship life will look very good. You'll attract a lot of young but kind of flirty people into your life. Again, don't make any relationship decisions until about 10 days from now. K2's in the ninth. Unexpected good luck, actually, from this combination. Mars aspects the sign, but you'll have to fight for it. And finally, Saturn's in the 11th house. Slow gains, but substantial gains. So before I sign off, I want to thank everyone for listening, for tuning in, if you do every week. And also, I'd like to mention the projects I'm doing with Lita Donatella, Rebecca, and Dr. Simone. Dr. Simone's an expert on health and diet, and also on meditation and Reiki. In those fields, I have a shared interest in. I'm not an expert on diet and nutrition, but I'm a Reiki master and a meditation teacher. And Lisa Donatella, Rebecca, and I have a shared interest in remedial measures. I'll be sharing those a lot more with you over the coming months. So we'll be discussing those things in more depth. I'll be doing more videos, and as I said, moving on to music videos and other areas because I like to expose underexposed acts or musicians or forms of music. And we'll be keeping on with this activity. But like I said, your feedback is welcome. Like I said, like, share, subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. Everything you do for me, even in allowing me this format, is greatly appreciated. And namaste. Thank you. And we're done, and we have a few minutes to spare. I'd also like to say, just like I said, keep in mind, if you have suggestions for the books, I'll be writing, please feel free to share them with me. I am still accepting students and readings. I'll be very busy over the next few months teaching at Kepler College, American College of Vedic Astrology, Dyer Academy, and with my own students. But I am planning eventually on trying to get some kind of a special, unique astrological institution going. It may be in collaboration with these institutions, it may be separate, I don't know yet. So we'll see what happens. And that having been said, I'll leave you to your own devices. Remember, everything that happens, astrology is not a compulsion, okay? It's something which you can adjust, especially if you see bad things happening early enough, you can steer the boat in a different direction, okay? So always keep that in mind. You were put here on this earth in order to experience certain things. You're experiencing certain things, but you don't have to experience everything, every negative thing that shows up in your chart. You have a choice to choose positive things, okay? It's pretty much up to you, okay? So it's a good life. Don't waste it. Do what you want to do. Do what you can do. And on those words, I will say namaste and God bless and have a good week.